Welcome to Wellness Interrupted.
Where real wellness meets real life and sometimes real chaos.
We're Katie and Ryan, married couple, fitness lovers, parents, and business partners who have been through it all. We've lost 80 pounds between us, had a baby, and more than a few awkward conversations.
This podcast is your behind-the-scenes look to how we live out wellness individually and as a couple. From workouts and nutrition to mindset, relationships, and showing up for each other even when life gets messy.
Each week, we're pulling back the curtain to share what actually is working for us, what isn't, and how we're figuring it out together.
So whether you're on your own health journey, navigating a relationship, or just trying to get 1% better each day,
you're in the right place, so let's get into it.
We are back for episode number 2 of Wellness Interrupted.
Woo! Hi.
All right, so last week we talked about insecurities.
Sure
and
did.
Yes, and how those cause all kinds of problems personally and in a relationship and what to do about them. And I think one of the biggest things that we discussed very broadly last time was communicating about those insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to take that one step further. We're going to talk about having tough conversations both with yourself,
Yes.
personally, which I think is vastly underrated.
It's got to start there, yeah.
And if you're in a relationship, how to have a tough conversation both for your partner's benefit and for your own benefit and for the benefit of the overall relationship, which is something most people, I think, avoid like the plague.
I mean, that is me. Historically, I am the one who's like, it's fine, we'll just ignore it. And I think we might have hit on this last week, but you are the one who always has driven our communication. And I remember when we first started dating, you kind of just laid it on the table.
Am I an over-communicator?
Yes, for sure. But it's okay. It's
or
a
is
good
it just
thing.
right?
We can talk about that. That could be a tough conversation. No, but I think that was something you kind of laid out there. Like, look, like, I'm like, no BS. I want to always talk about it. We're going to get through it, but we have to talk. And so that's been something I've had to grow with. So I feel like you and I have very different perspectives on this and like kind of how we operate and how we've been able to do that together. So I hope this will be really helpful for people.
I think it will be. So we'll get into the tough conversation with your partner in a second, but let's start personally. Having tough conversations with yourself when it comes to your health, your wellness, your general mental and physical health and abilities.
Yeah.
That's a place that I think people generally avoid.
Yes.
And there's a lot of reasons why we avoid it, but both you and I personally have had these conversations with ourselves before our weight loss journeys and before we've really made significant changes in our lives. But I think a lot of people don't even know where to start with that. And I think for me, thinking about my journey, I know how long I avoided that conversation. I didn't even think it was necessary to have. So let's start there. When you go think about your 45-pound weight loss journey, getting to where you are now, how did you finally get to the point where you had that conversation internally to say something needed to change? And then what was that like?
You know, I really just, as you're saying that, I picture just that cartoon, like devil and angel on your shoulder, because I feel like internally we really do have those two parts of ourselves. And I know we have many parts, but like there's always that part back then. I knew that the choices I was making were not helping me. I knew that I was doing the wrong stuff and I knew what I needed to do to make change. And I had a lot of moments of clarity of that. And I very quickly also then had that other voice just pushing all that aside and coming up with every excuse and just justifying. I think that was the biggest thing, justifying behavior, choices, everything. So for me, I think that, you know, I hope no one else has to get to this point, but I had to get to a point where kind of like all these other parts beyond my physical body started crumbling. Like I didn't feel like myself as a person anymore, emotionally, how I treated people, how I treated family, how I felt every day, just like this like anger I'd never experienced.
Because being overweight or not in shape, it doesn't just affect how you see yourself and if you fit into your clothes, like it seeps out into everything, I think.
Everything, like every part of my behaviors. And then not only just like did those kind of that lack of like drive show up in other areas of my life, but yeah, it started eating away at who I was. And I think that those unhealthy thoughts and behaviors really seeped into everything else. So I kind of got to that, like my version of a rock bottom.
Was there a moment that you realized, like, that it came to you? Because I think for most people, they probably live in that rock bottom for a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I did in a sense, but I again was really good and got really good at like manipulating my own thoughts into justifying things. And so I think that like the rock bottom for me, I've shared this in my weight loss story videos, but like I like snapped at my dad, and he's the kindest man in the whole world, and like it was so unjustified. It was so ugly and unnecessary. And luckily, I feel like God gave me clarity in the moment to be like, mirror, whoa, like who is this person? And that's where I really started to have those honest conversations with myself, and realize that I was lying to myself and telling myself all these things to make behavior okay that wasn't.
Well, I think it's an interesting point and perspective on what actually triggered you to think about this, because oftentimes we're looking for something in an adjacent area, like related to our fitness,
Oh
related to
yeah,
the
I
things
try
we're
in a
eating.
swimsuit and had a meltdown or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think more often than not, it's probably another part of our life, something at work, something with family, with friends. And you don't realize that that is actually related to your wellness, to
Yeah.
how you're treating your body and how you're treating your mind.
Yeah. So this, not to jump too much, but when you said that, it just made me think of something. And I think that I'm curious for you because we haven't really talked about kind of your internal conversations you had with yourself. And I think, I've gone through a lot of these. I've had a lot of time with myself and in my thoughts, especially going through having a baby and pregnancy and motherhood. There's been a lot that's changed, where I've really had to like dig in. But I think what's interesting is when I look back to the time before you really started making changes to your routine, there's that period of time. And of course, newborn stage is hard for everyone. It's a big adjustment. But when I look back, like I know you weren't happy. And I know you were thrilled about Luke. It wasn't about anything to do with him. But like I could just tell, like you were more easily angry about stuff. You just seemed like you had kind of this heaviness around you, and then physically it started showing up. I never said that to you. I never like pulled you aside and was like, there's something more than what's like triggering you to like get upset at these things that maybe shouldn't be as, big. But what was that for you?
Well, life has a really funny way of being able to mask things for you, right? So at that time, of course, we were having a baby. So feeling stressed or feeling a little bit off was easily explainable by the fact that we were having a child. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to think about there. And some of it, of course, was just the natural thoughts about how tough that can be.
Yeah.
But I also know that we were really well prepared for this. We had, we waited 10 years before we had a kid.
Yeah.
And so we were really well equipped to do this. And I think when I think back on it, I say, well, it definitely wasn't all that.
Right.
But I couldn't realize it during that time. And I think that's where, if people can kind of take a step back and look at their physical health and their mental wellness as a baseline for everything in life,
Yeah.
you can start to assign those issues to that instead of assigning it to the other factors in your life. So I wish I had done that, but honestly, I didn't. And so that's when I say, for me, it was really once he was born, now I was able to put those aside and say, okay, yes, he's here and there's still some of that, but now I had this new motivation in my life of having him, and I was able to look at him and then have that conversation with myself. So sometimes it takes, removing an easy excuse,
Yeah.
but also having something to inspire you can get you kickstarted with having that conversation as well.
Definitely. I think the one thing that has worked for me as like a tactical tool that anyone can do at home that's really easy, and I've done this in a lot of different situations, because if we're being honest with ourselves, I think most of the time, like I said, I knew, but I was like,
yes,
shush, 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 shush. Like, like
it doesn't seem like fixing your weight, your health, all that doesn't seem like that can fix your life problems.
Right.
But so often it can, but we don't want to make it seem like it's that doable.
Right.
Like people just don't want to often admit that so many things, whether it's the way they show up at work and how their performance at work, whether it's how they show up for their family and like the time you spend and how happy you are in your mood, we can't really wrap our heads around it. Could this possibly just come down to I need to be in better physical shape. I
Yeah.
need to have a clearer mind.
Eat better food.
And the answer is, I firmly believe yes.
Well, yes, because I think we get so wrapped up in the aesthetic superficial side of it. And I you know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Where it's like, and again, you can have goals. Like we have goals. Like I want to see some ab definition. Of course, you can have all those things. But that is not my why. That's not why I do what I do. And that to me, like working out and eating well saved me. It saved me from all of my thyroid symptoms and issues I was dealing with. When we met, I was sick literally with some like chronic something constantly.
Every few weeks.
Yeah, going to the doctor, going to urgent care.
Unfathomable,
like, constantly. So like it saved me. And I think, and my mental health too. But I think that when you really like pull away any of the physical attraction, physique, any of that stuff out of it, and you look at what you're eating and how you're moving your body for what it is, for literally taking care of this one vessel machine that you have, like you care for your car, like you care for your home, anything else you're trying to make last, you really realize how crucial it is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too sidetracked, so I want to give this tool,
Yeah,
but
the
I think
tool.
that like for me, when I've had these moments, because I really do believe that most of us know in your core, if you took a moment, you know the truth, right? So to have these tough conversations with yourself, get a piece of paper with whatever it is that you're dealing with and whatever issue you're going through, and write down all the reasons. Say it's like why you can't work out or you can't eat healthy or you can't lose weight, right? Write down everything you can come up with. Don't filter yourself. Don't try to like make it sound good or whatever. Just everything that comes to your head, put it on a piece of paper. And then go through it and circle things that are absolute truths. Not things that you like, well, it's inconvenient or it's like, I don't have time to work out because I have this. No. Like, can we make it, right? So like only circle the things that are 100% like non-negotiable truths. And I think you will surprise yourself when you realize like, there's probably not many circles. Like there's probably not going to be many, maybe none at all. And I think that when you really can live by the truth, not how you feel, and be honest with yourself about that, that's a way for you to really like black and white see it on paper. And it makes it hard to deny it at that point.
Yeah. I think that's a really good tip, that we need some self-reflection time.
Yeah.
Everyone's moving so fast. It's easy to let it all pass you by.
Yeah.
And so we do have to take that self-reflection time, whether that's on a piece of paper, in a notebook, a planner that you keep, in your phone notes, whatever it is. But sometimes just to think about what's going on around you.
Yeah.
But you said something a minute ago where you said, oh, deep down I knew.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to that because, I don't know, for me, and I feel like for a lot of people, I don't know that I knew. Like, I don't know that I really knew, which I think, coming from me as somebody who's worked in the health and fitness industry
Yeah.
for many years now, you would think I would know.
Yeah.
Like, I would think I would know, but I don't feel as though I did. And so
What do you think you didn't know though?
well, I don't think I knew that my health was the root cause. Like we talked about in the last episode,
Okay.
my delusions of getting buff, and that's
Delusions
why
of hotness.
that's why my clothes weren't fitting. Those delusions, I say, I'm not sure that I really had a grasp on what was occurring
Yeah.
and how it was impacting the rest of my life. So when I think about that, I'd say, oh gosh, I think maybe a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why just having these conversations is important, to tell
Right.
people, hey, yes, it's very, very sensical to believe that your health and your wellness does impact your entire life. That's a crazy thought. Like, we have to step back and say,
Yeah.
could it really make me better at my job? Could it really make me a better parent or partner?
Yes.
Could it really make me a better son, daughter, whatever? The answer is unequivocally yes. And if you're neglecting it, you're neglecting the easiest route to improving those things.
So many people are looking for the next thing that's gonna like, oh, if I take this and this and
Right,
this and this,
right.
right? And like, granted, I take a lot of supplements, but like, I think we're always looking for that quick fix of something that's gonna solve a problem, not just about weight, but general, like how you feel, or Tylenol, or whatever it is. And I think that like, I just, having experienced it from someone who was as sick as I was all the time and had all these issues and fatigue, like no one's business, like everything. I genuinely believe if you stopped eating fast food, ate whole foods, and went on a walk every day, even, it would solve like 90% of your problems. Because you're going to sleep better. It's food and movement impact our hormones. They impact everything. They are like, that is what makes us function the way we function. So it's not a surprise that if you're not putting good things in, you're not going to feel good. You know what I mean? And has nothing to do with weight. Like, it's just how we live, our mental health, how our brain functions, dopamine, serotonin, all of that.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And here's my addition to your write down things on paper.
Okay.
I think that's a good start, but I don't know it's enough to get somebody to believe that they can cure a lot of their life woes with nutrition and fitness. So in my journey, what I remember is after 30 days of doing what I started doing, I was a bigger believer than I had ever been. So what I would challenge someone to do is write it all down, circle them. Then whatever those things are that you want to be able to address, take 30 days to focus on really dialing in your nutrition, your steps, and some level of physical activity, whatever that looks like. 30 days. And I can almost guarantee you after 30 days, you're going to be a believer. You're going to feel and see something, but you have to like really, really lock in for 30 days.
You're going to feel it. I think that's the biggest thing is like, you will feel it, and you need to feel that because that's going to help give you that momentum. But more than anything, it's just going to help you understand how important it really is.
Yeah. And that's why, so we're doing on Love So Fitness, we're doing the Move in May challenge right now, which is 30 days of May.
I'm loving this. So
yes.
much.
1 mile or 20 minutes of walking per day plus your Move app workout. So if anybody's looking for something to get them going on a path like this, if they're willing to have that conversation with themselves to say, hey, yes, for this 1 month, and you can start this anytime in May and carry it into June if you want to.
Yeah.
This 1 month, I'm willing to like self-reflect with myself and say I need to do this thing for 30 days. That's where routine and commitment and consistency starts. And this makes it super easy. So I would encourage everyone to do something like this and just see how you feel. If you don't feel better after 30 days, I'd be shocked. But if you don't, then okay, we need to figure out some other plan for you. But this is a good momentum gainer.
Or really just creating that habit, right? And I think, again, that goes back to being honest with yourself. How do you talk to yourself? How do you convince yourself? And really realize, like, some people might say, I don't have 20 minutes. Okay, well, break it up into 5 minutes, 4 times a day. You know, like you have to be honest.
But let's go there for a sec. Let's go down into that one. I don't have 20 minutes. I don't have time to work out. I don't have any equipment. Eating healthy is expensive. These are all internal conversations that sometimes get said out loud online or to a friend or whatever. We know what they are. They're excuses. But we tell ourselves more excuses than anybody else. And they are the blockades to making progress. So when you think about having conversations with yourself, that conversation is likely to include very many excuses.
Yes.
How do you actually break down those excuses and convince yourself of what they are? Not that they're barriers, but that they're reasons you don't want to get started and you don't want to fail. How do you disable that part of your mind?
Oh, man. So I think that...
Because that's like, I feel like that's where everyone's at.
Yeah. And a lot of it stems from fear. Fear from, like, at least for me in my experience, it was fear that I wouldn't be able to do it and I wouldn't be consistent. And so it's just easier to come up with excuses, right?
Well, especially because most people have failed a lot at this.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that, like, that was for me, it was always just that, like, I'm like... Like, I feel like I'm just going to fail again and not be able to, like, do it consistently. And so...
stop there for 1 second to answer the question for people. Is fitness and nutrition actually hard?
What do you mean?
In your opinion, is it actually a hard thing that you're more likely to fail at than not?
No, I think it's super simple if you break it down and don't overcomplicate it, which I did for years. I overcomplicated all of it.
Because if you do keto and this diet and that diet and South Beach or whatever,
if you're trying to keep up with like crazy
hard.
things, it's hard, and there's so much information, and so you're trying to process all this on your own, independently, all the time, and know who to believe, who not to believe, what's true. Do I believe myself? Do I believe that? Like, there's a lot going on in our heads. And so I think that's where I had to, like, cut out all the noise, look at what I'd been doing and that wasn't working, and really start doing things a little bit differently. But they were the most simple things. Like I said, eating whole foods instead of processed foods or takeout, moving my body, just walking, doing something to get started like we're doing with this challenge. And I think that was the most helpful. But I think the hardest thing is really you have to be to a point where you're willing to be aware of it. Because if you're not even looking for it, you believe it. I mean, I believed those lies for a long time. I knew in the gut that it was a lot of lies and stuff, but I sure convinced myself and believed him really well. So I think that like you have to be a point where you're like willing to look for it. And then you just have to be able to be aware. So when those things come, not usually out of your mouth, but in your head, they pop up, you can stop yourself and be like, wait. It's just like negative self-talk. It's the same thing as if you're saying, I'm fat, I'm ugly, whatever. You have to hear that and be able to stop yourself and actually break it down.
Yeah, and I think of it now in a different way. My excuses are still there, but they're not the same. They're not the can't get started ones. They are when I'm sore and hurting from a workout before, or when I'm just really tired and I go do my workout, I have myself saying in my mind, you can't get 10 reps of this. Like there's no way today you're getting 10. Just go for 8.
Yeah.
I have that happen all the time. When I'm trying to stay on my eating plan and I'm maybe feeling a little hungry if I'm doing a cut and I just hear that voice saying, no, you just throw a little more in there. That's totally fine. I still get those same excuses.
Yeah.
I think about now it's being willing to be more skeptical with yourself.
Yeah.
I have to just tell myself, I know that I did a TikTok about this, but I know that my brain is a liar. It's going to lie to promote comfort for me. And I appreciate that many times, but in this situation, I don't appreciate it. And so my initial reaction to all of those internal conversations now is, you're lying. Stop it. Think the opposite.
Yeah.
If it's saying you can't do 10, you can definitely do 10.
And that's the thing. I think it's like when you get to the point with yourself where you have to just be honest and you honestly, like you just have to choose. You're like, you just have to make the choice to say, I'm going to do the thing that's harder. Like, because I know if I do the thing that's harder, it'll eventually be easier. But if it's harder for me right now, it's probably the good thing for me right now.
Definitely.
And you just have to do it. And it sucks a little bit sometimes. But I think it's like, I don't know. I think about like, what would I tell a friend who like really wants to feel something different? If a friend came to me, and that's kind of where I got to in my own head, where I'm like, if a friend came to me and was like, I'm struggling, this is what's going on, I feel all these things, I want this other thing. What would I tell them? Would I say, you don't have time to work out?
That's great.
You don't know, like just, no, it's fine, just eat fast food. No, I'd be like, no, like you can do it here, split it up into 5 minutes instead of one 20-minute chunk. If you know what I mean? Like, I have to think of it that way.
That's a great way to look at it. And that segues into like, I think the second part of this episode, which is if you have a friend that would tell you the bad thing, you probably need to get them out of your life.
I did a TikTok about that the other day. That's so funny because I literally was like, no, I remember that so much. If you have people in your life when you're really trying to change and you're making healthy choices and they're like, you look fine. No, you don't need to do that. Oh, just skip it. It's just one night. Oh, just da-da-da-da. Maybe they're well-intentioned. Maybe they're subconsciously like trying to drag you down. But at the end of the day, I think most of it stems from their own insecurities and them not wanting to feel uncomfortable. So yes, if they're in your life and they're not supporting you in the ways that you need to be supported, you might need to like distance yourself for at least a while, if not forever. Depends. People change. Okay, so I do want to get into, I think, kind of with that, with the friends, I feel like that also segues a bit to the point that I want to dig into a bit more, which is how do you have those tough conversations with someone else?
All right, so before we dive into the second part of this episode, we're going to do a new segment here. It's called
Pew, pew.
Trends Timeout.
We weren't going to do that at the same time.
I liked it.
All right.
I don't know what the sound effect was.
I don't know.
Let's keep it.
Okay.
All right, so in this segment, we are going to talk about one hot health and wellness trend and give you our take on it, if we've done it, if we might do it, and if you should do it.
All right, so I want to talk about mouth taping.
Yes.
Because I kind of forced you into starting to mouth tape.
I was terrified of mouth. I literally just thought of it as someone suffocating me.
You really struggle with breathing though, which is why, like at night,
Yes.
which is why I was like, this will be great for you. And you were terrified because you're like, no, I sleep with my mouth like wide open. And you're what we call a mouth breather.
I don't like that term. I feel like it's very derogatory, and I have seasonal allergies, and I also have something up here that's blocking it, which the doctor is. So
Yeah.
I
Do
don't
you have
like
a deviated septum?
maybe.
I think so.
But okay, for the people who do not know
Yes.
what mouth taping is the practice of taking literal tape. It's a little
Kind of like meshy tape. Yeah.
mouth patch, if you will, and putting it over your mouth, closing your lips so that as you sleep, you breathe entirely through your nose.
Right. So I listened to an audiobook. I think it was actually called Breathe. And it was about a lot of studies and research they did on this and how much mouth taping can help improve your breathing overall. It helps if you do have seasonal allergies because really we're supposed to be breathing through our nose primarily, especially as we sleep with our mouths closed. It helps with how your jaw forms, like jaw structure, teeth, everything. And then your nose because it helps filter things out because we have like, you know, everyone has hair and it sounds gross, but everyone has hairs and things in their nose that are intended to help filter so it can help with all of those things.
So in practice, what's your take on it personally?
I personally love it. I think it's great. Do I notice any huge difference in myself doing it? No, I can't say that I did. Do I feel like my jaw got extra snatched? No. But I think that it's like, I'm always on board for things where I'm like, if I don't feel like it has a negative impact and it might have a positive one, then I'm going for it and I'm going to try it. That's kind of how I approach it and how I feel about this one.
My take on it is I tried it. At first, I was very uncomfortable.
You'd wake up and I'd find like, because we had like, I had pink ones and got him black ones, there'd be little like, look like caterpillars, like little rolled up tapes in the bed and stuff.
Well, that's kind of my problem is that I can't keep it on at night.
Yeah.
I don't intentionally take it off. But at some point during the night, it comes off and it ends up somewhere in the bed, in the bathroom. I'm not sure. But that's what's made it kind of difficult for me. So I don't know how long I'm keeping it on at night. I fall asleep with it on. From there, it's anyone's guess.
I've heard that if you mouth tape with, and then you put a nose strip on, it actually makes it better.
I could see that because I have done those nose strips. And as an aside, I think those work great.
Yeah.
And it really opens up my breathing.
So maybe try that. I forgot to tell you
It's
that.
a lot of gear.
Well, just try it.
All right, we could try it.
I'm already asleep, so it's fine. I don't have to
Okay,
wake
so
you.
then the verdict is, should somebody else that's listening to this try mouth taping?
I think if you have breathing issues, for sure. If you like know that you sleep with your mouth open, yes, because really it is better for a lot of things to sleep with your mouth closed. I think it's worth it. But here's what I'll say. Do not waste your money on, I'm not trying to like bash any specific brands, but there are some brands that charge a stupid amount of money, like over $30 for a handful of patches or the mouth tape. And there's no reason. Like, they're pretty much all the same.
We've tried 3, I'd say, different brands.
Yeah, TikTok, Amazon. Get some that have good reviews. Like, you just want them to like be sticky enough that they stay on, but not so much that you feel like you're like waxing your face. But there's cute. I've got really cute like little pink lips from TikTok, and I think it's like 20 of them or something for like $5.
And if you're a guy, you just got to figure out with, you know, any facial hair you have where it sticks well, how big it is, because I got some that because of my facial hair, it just didn't stick.
Right.
And so I really knew that didn't work. But otherwise, yeah, I agree. I think it's worth a shot. If it can help you, they're not very expensive if you get the normal
And
ones.
some people swear by it. Like, love it. So yeah, give it a try. I'm all green light on mouth taping.
Green light on mouth taping.
I think we should come up with a if we're gonna do this, I think we need to come up with like a thing for if it's like a go, not a green light. I'm sorry, I have a 2-year-old, so like
All right, leave
something else.
If you have an idea for what could be a good seal of approval or a thumbs down on any wellness trend.
Ideally more interesting than like thumbs up, thumb down, you know?
Yeah,
like
we can
give us some ideas.
We can come
Clearly
up with
we need
that.
some help.
So leave a comment, let us know what you think.
All right, so I want to dig into what I think is probably the juiciest part of this conversation, which is how to have tough conversations with a partner, a friend, someone in your life besides yourself. Because again, I think it has to start with yourself. It's all got to start there. But if you're trying to have a tough conversation with someone else, and this could be about their health, it could be about their fitness, their physique, their goals in life or lack of goals in life with career, whatever it is, I think that like again, that comes down to your total relationship wellness, is being able to have that open communication. And it needs to go both ways, but it doesn't always. So if someone is in a relationship where maybe they're nervous to have a conversation with their partner just because it might be awkward, or the other person either doesn't like to talk or they don't know how they're going to take it, how would you encourage them? Because you're my communicator.
Well, first, I have to say, look, I think we all need to make a pledge as a society that we're going to be okay with communicating in relationships, right? Yeah. Let's all take that pledge today, commit to each other and to ourselves that we will do that, because that's where it starts.
Yeah.
If you get into a relationship as a poor communicator, if you get into a relationship as a game player, that is going to have a ripple effect through your entire relationship. Mm-hmm. How you start it is how it will be. And so I think it begins there, where we all need to say it's okay if somebody tells us the truth.
Yeah.
I want to hear the truth from you. I want to have an honest conversation about what you want, what you like, what I want, what I like. That's not a bad thing, but we often, I think this often gets talked about as love bombing a lot when people are communicating. Mm-hmm. It gets talked about as, oh, they're too much, but is it? Because once you get into a relationship and you have a poor communication set, now you have a poor relationship.
You were texting me every day. You told me how you felt. Like, I think, and that was unusual for me. I was like, what? Like, that's all I ever wanted as a girl. And then when I got it, I was like, this guy's weird. I feel like he's like way too.
But that's why so many people don't do it.
I know, it's true.
Right?
We have like such messed up thoughts, and that's obviously with just like love and relationship. But I think in general, yeah, it's like it's either that like too much, or I think too, if someone has any type of feedback, like then it's like they're being mean, or like,
let's really bring this back to what it is. In general, it's accountability. And
people don't like accountability.
Yeah. So we need to be willing to take accountability first. Mm-hmm. And that comes into how you talk to somebody in your relationship. Yeah. But look, I had many dating relationships when I was younger, before I met you, who I lost those relationships because of communication. Yeah. It was like, oh, you communicate, it's too much. Like, you talk too much. Share your feelings too much, whatever. And I just had to get to a point where I said to myself, I don't want to be with somebody who finds this to be too much. Yeah. Because it's too frustrating for me to not be able to talk about how I feel and what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. And look, everyone's different. People may not like to talk about their feelings and whatever. Yeah. But I think that it's a very healthy thing to do.
Right. I agree. And I think that, it was unusual for me because I'd always wanted that, never experienced that. But then it also is familiar in a lot of ways, and this is not to be like weird. Everyone knows you like marry similarities to your parents, but my dad is very much that way. Like, he is a communicator, he's a talker, you know. So I think that it actually was comforting in a lot of ways, where I was like, oh, and I love my parents' relationship. So like, obviously, and my mom was never a communicator, so I think, same. But I think that like that was really cool for me to see, because I was like, oh, okay, this is what I need. I might not like it a ton, or it might be uncomfortable at times for me, but it's clearly like what I need.
Yep. So let's start with the beginning of this. You are in a relationship of some kind, or even if you have a friendship, honestly, it depends how solid of a friend you want to be.
We've lost a few, for being honest.
Yeah. So. But you have somebody in your life that could use some help. Yeah. And I think that there's two reasons why you'd have a conversation with somebody like this, and let's just center it around their health and fitness, right? It's either because you think they need to make a change for them, for their own personal well-being, even if you're thinking, I'm totally fine with them, I'm attracted to them, I feel good about our relationship, but I think if they made this change for them, they would feel better. Okay, that's one. Yeah. Two, which can couple with one or not, is I, as the other person in this relationship, feel you need to make a change because it's affecting me. Yeah. And that is completely legitimate. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that people don't feel like is okay.
Yeah.
That feels selfish, or it feels like it's not my place to say. Gosh, how many times is that? It's not my place.
Oh, totally.
Right? Whether it's friendships or a relationship, I shouldn't say anything.
Absolutely. But I just think I mean, I have friends, I know so many people, so many women in the community who have talked about this, that, they're trying to make these changes, but their partner only wants to eat, whatever it is that's unhealthy, whether they're making it at home or takeout or whatever. And it's like, they have such a hard time being able to do it for themselves because they're like, well, I have to make this other food for them or for like this or that. And they struggle because they don't have that support. And so that is like one of those times where you're like, even if you're happy with your partner, but you're like, but this is bringing me down now too.
Well, and it can cause struggle for sure as
Yeah.
you're trying to reach your goals potentially. But bigger than that in a relationship versus your, like, wow, I guess this could happen in personal conversation with yourself. It causes resentment.
Yeah.
And resentment is the underlying thing that eats away at relationships or even your own personal self-confidence.
Right.
You start to resent the other person, whether that's because you feel like you're reaching different levels and you want them to come along with you, and the fact that they don't either makes you frustrated because it doesn't feel like they're sharing the same love and commitment you are, or attractiveness.
Right.
I think that especially when we talk about fitness, I know we were talking about putting aside those superficial things, but that's a very serious thing that comes up in relationships.
Yeah.
Is I'm less attracted now to this person, and that's a hard one.
I think for women, not to speak for all women, but I think a lot of times, obviously physical attraction is so important, but I think a lot of times it's that like drive and passion and seeing that the man in your life like is motivated and obviously paying attention to you and like telling you look beautiful and all of that, but also like you see it in them that they're like the man, right? That's how I feel. And so I think I can see even in that, aside from some of the physical attraction stuff too, is like if they're not doing things, whether that's physically for themselves, like being active, if they're not like striving to do more for the family or for work, whatever it is, like that can start to like wear too. And I think that attraction plays into that. And that's where people start to grow apart. We all grow, especially if we got married at 24, 26, right? Now, however many years later, a lot of years later, like we've grown. I've changed a ton. You've changed a ton, but we've continued to make sure we grow together because of that communication.
Yeah. And for men, I think it's a bit different, just in the traditional roles at least, where there's a level of this is a very much just a physical thing that I want my wife, my partner to look a certain way because I'm attracted to a certain thing. And so often I feel like you see people that start to look elsewhere outside of the relationship, or even just are consuming things online that are what their preference is, but their partner is not those things.
Yeah.
And that, I think it's a direct result oftentimes of the partner just seeming like, well, I don't care what attracts you.
Right.
And at some point you did. Because you got into a relationship, either
Right.
you were more that way, you looked a certain way, you did a certain thing, you were in a certain physical shape, but at some point that fell off, and now you're sending that signal to your partner of, I don't really care what you like.
Yeah, and I think that's where that resentment
And
builds up, though.
that's hurtful.
For sure. And it's like chicken or the egg where it starts, right? But I think that like at the core, like women want to feel loved, men want to feel respected. You want to like have this like mutual,
But everyone wants to feel desired.
right? Yeah.
And they want to feel like their partner wants them to desire them.
So it's like, did the man stop doing X, Y, and Z, and the woman then
it's
is
total
getting
chicken or egg,
resentful, and
yeah.
then she's like, well, then screw you, so I'm not gonna put in the effort, and it's like,
it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. Someone has to be willing to like step up and fight for it, and have that communication, start making change, and be the example. And sometimes I think in friendships and in relationships, conversations and those tough conversations are important, but I think it has to start, again, we have to take accountability for ourselves. I think it has to start with us, and it has to start with us being the example and emulating what we want to see.
Well, and that's a great first step, right? So how do we have these conversations, or how do we kickstart this?
Yeah.
Because I think it's legitimate for somebody to say, hey, when I'm thinking about fitness, health, wellness, I want my partner to be healthy. I want them to be fit.
Yeah.
And I want them to be well in their mind and their
Right.
body, right? I think that's totally legitimate. But you certainly can't really expect that of somebody if you're not doing it yourself.
And out of left field, all of a sudden you're like, hi, I need this for you. They're like, what?
Yeah, no, if you're just eating terribly
Yeah.
and are super lazy and doing nothing, and then you're like, hey, you know what? It would be awesome if you were just shredded right
Yeah.
now. I think that's pretty unreasonable.
Yeah.
So it starts with taking accountability for yourself and saying, if I'm interested in that, then I need to be on my way.
Right.
Right. I need to be on my way there. And then from there, yes, it's how do I have the conversation? And these are hard conversations
Yeah.
to have. So start with getting yourself on the track first. We talked about this, I think, in maybe a different video or something, but I really think that after you do that, the first step is an invitation into the experience.
Yeah.
It's not an accusation. It's not even an ask of, hey, I like if you do this. Would you do this? It's, would you do this with me? Because doing it together makes it so much more easy to walk down that road without getting into those areas where someone's going to say, hold on a second, this doesn't seem fair. I'm insulted by this.
Right. That's such a good point. I think that invitation, like emulating it, inviting them in. And then the other thing I was just thinking about that I feel like is really important that kind of opens the door to these tough conversations is asking questions.
Oh, yeah.
So starting with like trying to understand, say it's you want your husband to start working out and being healthier, whatever. Starting to understand like where his head's at with all of that. So maybe you're like, this guy hasn't worked out in 5 years. He eats garbage. But like kind of just like finding ways, once you've already been kind of the example and whatever, starting to find ways of like, what does he care about? Like
we said it earlier. Most people don't recognize they're in a bad spot.
Right.
They truly don't recognize, even if they talk about it, even if they make jokes about their dad bod or whatever, they don't really recognize the ramifications.
Yeah.
So open the door with questions.
Yeah, I think, and this can go to a career, if they've been in the same job forever and you're like, wow, I want to see them strive for more, whatever it is, like kind of trying to find out like what they want. Because I think, I'm not a man, you could probably speak to this more. I think often like, that kind of gets forgotten. Like we think about women and our feelings and our hopes and desires all the time and all of this, but I don't think I don't enough stop to like ask you, like, what do you see? Like, what do you want for yourself in this area or for our family? Like that type of stuff. I've tried. I mean, I think I'm decent at that actually, but I think it gets skipped a lot. And I think asking those questions can help.
Well, I think so often men have a lot of expectations that we put on ourselves to be the provider, to be the strong one, to be the one that has everything kind of together.
Yeah.
And to take on more on top of that may not seem tenable. And so we often set that aside and it becomes the excuse.
Yeah.
So I think asking those questions to a man initially may be met with a funny reaction because it's so uncommon.
Right.
But it's not the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think that men will appreciate that. I know I appreciate that. It's just, look, this is a best practice in developing any kind of relationship when you're meeting friends for the first time. How often have you sat down with new friends that have asked you a ton of questions and you've just been absolutely blown away by how engaged you are with them versus how many times you've walked away from a new friendship dinner and said to your partner, or said to yourself, they didn't ask me anything.
Yeah. Like they asked like nothing about
right?
me.
It's the same exact thing.
You're
so I think opening the door with questions is really good.
And I think often just creating space and time for you and your partner or your friend or whatever, like where those conversations can just naturally happen. Again, it's not in negative comments. It's not in trying to criticize them into changing or pointing out all their flaws. But I think just, again, with life moving so fast, we're always doing stuff. Even when you're together, like you're like really busy and trying to find time where you can just have intimate time to talk. I think that can open the door a lot of times to like be able to have the opportunity to even have these conversations.
Yeah, agreed. So for us personally, we've obviously been on both spectrums of this, and I was maybe thinner and in more shape when we first met, and you were 45 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
And then you completely transformed. And then vice versa. Later on, I gained a bunch of weight and you were in very good shape. And then I transformed, right?
Yeah.
And now we're both at a really good place.
Yeah.
So I think just be curious from your perspective. I can share my perspective, but how those shifts in our relationship impacted you, how you felt when I was at my heaviest versus now, and were you comfortable? Did you feel like having those conversations? What helped you engage with me on those? Because I think we were both good support systems for the other, but we didn't push each other to a point where the person felt bad, and that's a good line to walk.
Yeah, I think that like it's been interesting because at a lot of these phases, it's good for me to reflect because I feel like I don't think of myself as a selfish person, but I think in this regard, I have been in a sense where I've kind of mostly been focused on my own health and fitness and body and everything else and we talked about that during pregnancy and stuff. I'm like, I don't know, like I just had a baby. I'm not worried about your body, but I think that, I think it was interesting because there's been times, obviously, and we might have talked about this a bit in the last episode, but where we all have an idea, like you said, of like what we innately are most physically attracted to. And I never felt comfortable being like, hey, Ryan, I think you should like work out harder and try to get like a little more jacked. Cause like I never wanted to make you feel like I wasn't fully in love with and attracted to you as you were, because I was. But like I obviously like also like was like, ooh, but like if you were a little like, whatever, that'd be great. So I think I never felt comfortable having that conversation because I didn't know how to have it without making you feel bad about yourself. I feel like I don't know why. I think it's like harder. I always would worry that it would like chip away at a piece of you that I like couldn't repair.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I would say you probably had this conversation in a different way with me than you even realized.
Okay.
And I think I've done the same with you, maybe subconsciously, but like I think we've both
so
done
curious.
it.
Okay.
Well, I just think that there's times throughout all relationships where conversations come up that involve, whether it's other people, that involve celebrities,
Is it because I love Thor?
That should have been my first clue. But no, I think it's because there's just going to be natural conversation that comes up where people will reveal over the course of time what they're really attracted to. And sometimes it'll be, this is not a funny conversation.
No, I know. I'm trying to like, I'm so interested if there was like,
I'm never going to tell you now because you keep laughing.
Why?
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
it's not a funny conversation, but I'm serious. I think that it's like something that people really struggle with because they're so afraid to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And look, yes, we both came into a relationship and we're later on in a relationship where we didn't have any expectation of the person changing. Like I started dating you and I married you when you're at your heaviest. So there was certainly no time where I said, oh, this is not what I'm interested in. But that evolves over time. And I think that I tried to just be honest with you, be clear about what I was attracted to.
Yeah.
But it also timed up with asking you questions about what you were interested in, what you wanted to do, and then doing it together.
Right.
When you started your journey and you first started going to do yoga classes, that was like the very first thing. It would have been really easy for me to say, great, I'm so happy for you. Go do that.
Right.
And instead, I went to every single class with you.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I was going, yeah, of course. If she drops weight, like, I will find that attractive. And I'm not afraid to say that. That's okay.
Right.
So if I go participate in this, what is the likelihood of her sticking to it? I think is much higher.
Yeah, and that support for sure. Like
Right.
having that was because it was something we did together. And so then
Yeah.
it was fun and I was excited because you wanted to do it with me instead of it just being like, okay, you go do you. And then I felt like I was missing out on time. We could have been hanging out.
Exactly. And I think that came again where, you started eating healthier and you started developing what would eventually become the meal plans, the recipe book. And again, me not being resistant to that because I knew, it was good for me, but also I knew like from an attraction standpoint, it helps you. And that's not a bad thing to be aware of that and be willing to say like, yeah, I'm willing to get involved in that. And I think you've done kind of this a similar thing where like I've gotten more into weighing my meals and really like dialing in again at a different level that you maybe did in the past, but haven't done as much lately. But once I started doing it, then you're like, yeah, I'll do that too. And that really motivated me.
Well, that's awesome because I think that like that scared me for a while because I think of, how my relationship with food and calorie counting and macro, like all that stuff in the past. And I was so scared. I'm like, well, I've evolved a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first time where, taking a moment to like track and weigh stuff again, to really check in and like make sure I was fueling my body for the workouts I'm doing and everything else was actually really empowering versus it in the past was like caused a lot of issues and like eating the way I was eating and mental and everything else. And I was like, oh no, this is empowering because now I know that I'm going to like get the results I'm looking for when I'm lifting heavier and like doing that kind of stuff. So that was good. And I just have to have an interlude because I think that unintentionally we just had an awkward, hard conversation.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to laugh. I think I was like so caught off guard and then I was just awkward. And that's what happens when
That's okay.
I know. But see, that's why I'm not the best communicator. I'm still, how many years have we been married? Almost 14.
But I think what it comes down to is that at some point, once you both are on the same track of we want to support each other, we want to be honest about, what's important to us in our lives and also what we're attracted to. Because I'm attracted to you and how fit you are. Like that's very attractive to me. And I think the same goes for you. So now we mutually motivate each other. We help keep each other accountable, and being able to be better for ourselves also becomes being able to be better for each other.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful thing. Like, talk about motivation for yourself. The second you have somebody else invested in it with you, I feel like I'm so much more motivated as a result.
Oh, totally. I feel like we need to pop up on screen some of the random texts that we send each other while we're working out. Because Ryan sends me a lot of really cute, encouraging texts.
I guess you could say they're cute. You could. I don't like really working out together, but I like working out near you because I think you're really sexy when you work out. So I like working out. With you.
I like working out with you like once a week.
Sometimes.
Fine.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I could go on for hours, and I wanted to be able to share more about some of our recent tough conversations, which we didn't even get to today.
I feel like there's another episode that will be suited for that.
Okay, we'll save that one.
So we talked about today having tough conversations with yourself, how to do that, how to say no to your excuses, be skeptical of them, and then just be able to realize how much of an impact that can have on the rest of your life, not just your health and fitness. We also talked about how to have that tough conversation with your partner. It starts with being able to invite them into the world that you get started with first.
Yes.
And then be willing to have open conversations and support each other along the way, but not being accusatory.
Not accusatory. And don't laugh when they're sharing things.
Don't laugh when they're sharing serious
things.